Joe Biden and others in the administration came under fire from the Gold Star families who lost loved ones during the chaotic pullout from Afghanistan. The families have felt lied to, strong-armed, manipulated, and ignored since the events that cost their loved ones their life. Further salting the wound, the evacuation has been repeatedly called a success by the executive branch. It was about 2 years ago that we decided we had to get out of Afghanistan, and we had to get out by September 11th. We put a line in the sand, and by doing so, by putting a date as the primary driver of our decisions, what we did was make like the most basic leadership mistake. In leadership and in organization, form always follows function. The function is the actual purpose. It's the intended goal. That is what you have to seek to understand first. And once you really understand the function, then you build forms around it. And a date or any kind of timeline is most certainly a form, not a function. What happens is when you prioritize form first, you have a really good shot at being very ineffective on actually accomplishing your function. And so we said that we're going to get out by this date. It was politically expedient for us. There was a historic reason for it. But because of that, we didn't quite understand the function. And reports came out even during just the horrific scenes from the withdrawal, where not only did 13 soldiers unnecessarily lose their life, but we left behind many Americans, thousands of Afghani allies, many of our interpreters, people who had risked their lives in the country to help us in our initiatives there, many of them are still over there. It was a complete debacle. And reports came out that maybe even the majority of intelligence that was coming to the administration said that this would happen, that we can't do it on this timeline, that the plan was not going to be effective, and we did it anyway. Proverbs 15:22 says, plans fail for lack of counsel, but with many advisors, they succeed. And this plan certainly did fail in many ways. And it wasn't necessarily because of a lack of counsel or because there weren't a whole lot of advisors. It was because all of that advice and all that intelligence was either ignored or rationalized away. As a leader, your decisions have consequences. And the more significant your leadership position, the more consequence every decision you has bears out on other people's real lives. And when it comes to things like war, and you are the leader, the burden that you live with is the decisions that you make actually cost people their lives. And every one of those lives maybe seems small to you. It shouldn't. But even the smallest pebble, when thrown into still water, has ripple effects that go on and on and on. And that's how it is with the families and the loved ones and the friends who are left behind. And that's certainly what we're seeing. We're going to look at a local news station who was reporting on the testimonies from these Gold Star families. Let's take a look at this.
2 years ago, 13 U.S. service members died during the withdrawal in Afghanistan, and now some of the families they left behind are testifying about their quest for answers on what went wrong. Those families were on hand for an emotional hearing. They say the administration still hasn't given answers about what went wrong. Others say they believe the military has not been truthful on what happened that day.
When our leaders, including the Secretary of Defense and our Commander-in-Chief, call this evacuation a success as if there should be celebration, it is like a knife in the heart.
Confusion, deceit, lost, angry, sad, heartbroken, and disgusted. These are the feelings that the service members felt and are still feeling. These are the feelings I'm feeling.
Obviously, that is super heartbreaking. We have kind of a compilation of some more quotes from these testimonies. We were told lies, given incomplete reports, incorrect reports, total disrespect. I was told to my face that he died on impact. This is her son. That's not true. The only reason I know this is because witnesses told me the truth. I was lied to and basically told to shut up. Our system is quick to identify those at fault in faraway countries, but yet we are challenged to evaluate ourselves, another woman said. I have no illusion that anyone will be prosecuted or terminated for ignoring intelligence or making bad decisions, not even for lying to our Gold Star families. This one is, to me, there's a lot of these quotes that you can read. This one is the poorest leadership that was on display. Myself and the other families of our 13 were waiting for the plane's arrival to the United States when Biden, our elected president, entered the room. When he approached me, his words to me were, "My wife Jill and I know how you feel. We lost our son as well. and we brought him home in a flag-draped coffin. My heart beat faster, Rex said. I started shaking, knowing that their son died from cancer, and they were able to be by his side. Rex said she began wondering how someone could honestly, I'm sorry to be so heartless to say, knew how I felt a little over 24 hours after learning of my son's death. So a lot of what they're saying is not only is no one being held accountable. I mean, this was a disaster. It was an international disaster. And many people feel like, right or wrong, many people speculate that Russia's courage grew to actually invade into Ukraine because they saw just how inept we were in what should have been a routine, planned out, multi-stage evacuation from Afghanistan. And they saw the absolute disaster and our reaction and our official output and our words and communication after the disaster, because the administration heralded this as a massive success. And they have held that line the entire time. So no one lost their job. No one was held accountable. No one has owned up to the fact that they went against the intelligence reports, that people really lost their lives, not just American soldiers. If you'll remember, we dropped a tactical bomb on supposed terrorists only to find out that we had killed 10 innocent Afghani people. I mean, there are families and friends over there having to deal with that. All of this was just a massive disaster. And it seems like no one has really been held accountable. And the families are saying, every time you get up and call this a success, it is like salt in the wounds, because you are just actively lying in order to try and cover your tracks. Now, this is not a new problem. There have been leaders all throughout history who made bad decisions and then tried to spin it for their own PR. All the way back in 480 BC, this is like 2,500 years ago, Xerxes the Great led a massive Persian army and fleet into Greece, aiming to conquer the Greek city-states. However, his campaign suffered a significant defeat at the Battle of Salamis, largely due to his own strategic errors and his overconfidence. The loss of ships and soldiers were a significant blow to his campaign. And then after the defeat, Xerxes attempted to downplay the extent of the losses and the significance of the setback. He shifted blame onto his subordinates. He ordered the execution of one of his naval commanders. Xerxes eventually abandoned his invasion altogether and returned to Persia, leaving a substantial portion of his army to die in Greece. So this is not new. Leaders have been trying to cover their tracks for a very, very long time. Proverbs 28:13 says, whoever conceals their sins does not prosper, but the one who confesses and renounces them finds mercy. I don't think anyone's expecting our leaders to be perfect. We are, I think, rightfully expecting them, when they get intelligence and briefing and wisdom from the people that we have put in position to give us that wisdom, when we have the experts in the room who are saying this is not going to work, I do think rightfully we can expect leaders to listen to that unless they have a very, very good reason, and not a prioritizing form over function reason or a politically expedient reason, because you can't move with political expedience when it comes to war, when people's lives are on the line. I've worked in organizations where when things happened, instead of getting up and just letting people know, I mean, this is actually what the Gold Star families are asking for somebody in the administration, preferably the president, to come out and say, look, I'm glad we're out, but we really screwed some stuff up. That's what they're looking for. And I've been a part of teams who were unwilling to do that. And when we made mistakes or when negative things happened inside the organization, all of a sudden, we decided that our job was to spin and do PR or just not to say anything about it. And that is a lack of courage. And when you're put in positions of leadership, you owe it to the people that you're leading to be transparent with them. And you owe it to have the integrity and the courage to admit, especially when you make faults. There's a big story in scripture about one of the greatest leaders ever. I mean, like a hero of scripture who made a devastating series of offensive mistakes. Of course, it's the story of King David and Bathsheba. If you know the story, King David is not where he's supposed to be out at war with his men. Instead, he stays back in the palace. From his palace, he sees a woman bathing down in the village. He has a married woman brought to him. He has intercourse with her. She becomes pregnant. It's obviously his child because her husband is out on the field of battle. And then he just starts trying to patch it up. He brings the husband back in so that they'll meet up and, they'll be intimate, and then he'll never be the wiser because he'll just think it's his kid. And then the soldier will not do that. He won't go home because he's such a loyal soldier. Since no one else gets to go home, he's not going to go home. So that's not going to work. So eventually David has this guy put on the front lines, has everyone else step back. And of course, he's killed in battle. Now, what we're looking for is accountability with our leaders. And that's exactly what came for David. And the consequences were very steep. In 2 Samuel 12, it says, "So the Lord sent Nathan to David, and when he arrived, he said to him, 'There were two men in a certain city, one rich and the other poor. The rich man had very large flocks and herds, but the poor man had nothing except one small lamb that he had bought. He raised the lamb, and she grew up with him and with his children. And from his meager food, the lamb would eat. From his cup she would drink, and in his arms she would sleep. The lamb was like a daughter to him. Now a traveler came to the rich man, but the rich man could not bring himself to take one of his own sheep or cattle to prepare for the traveler who had come. Instead, he took the poor man's lamb and prepared it for his guest. And David was infuriated with the man and said to Nathan, 'As the Lord lives, the man who did this deserves to die. Because he has done this thing and shown no pity, he must pay 4 lambs to that one lamb.' And Nathan replied to David, 'Man, you are that man.'" The story really brings into focus our ability to see so clearly when someone else needs to be held accountable, and also our ability to rationalize away the things that we should be held accountable for. These Gold Star families are grieving. And if the sacrifice that their loved ones made wasn't enough, now they are living with the absolute heartbreak of feeling like there is a narrative being put out completely opposed to the truth of the situation.